Doesn't it just feel like our whole country is just so divided these days? I feel like every issue is just one big argument that just leads absolutely nowhere. And you know, many will say that it wasn't always like this and that there were glory days when our country was just so much better. I actually think that there's some merit to that. With the rise of fascism in the 1930s, it was easy for us as a country to say, not that. That is not who we are. That is not the way this country is going to be. We're going to stand together. We're going to unite against that. We all came together against the Nazis, altering our economy, our society, our culture in order to fight against that ideology. And you could even say that that continued into the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s and even into the 90s when, you know, there was the Soviet Union and the whole Cold War. It was easy to say we are the United States, we're a capitalist society, and we are against them. The Soviets, the communists, not that. And therein lies the core of our issue. It's always easier to come together when there's a large common enemy that we can easily say, those are not our values, that is not who we are. But we don't necessarily have that these days. Yes, there are always going to be those who we're at war with or we're at conflict with or we don't like, and you know, there's that, but we don't have the large external aggressor like we did in the 1930s and 40s and then even into the Cold War. And in the absence of that large external aggressor and with the rise of communication, I think that we've all come to realize how different we are. Granted, I think we've always been very different, but we're just now realizing it as we're able to connect and interact so much more. And people are much more bold about the ways that they're different. This has left us to create divides among ourselves and put ourselves into different camps and really just break apart and fracture as a country. So what does that mean? We're divided. Yes, well, we know. Is that the problem? No. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that we don't know what our American values are anymore. We, as the United States of America, are a country acting on our interests instead of our values. And interests go in all different sorts of crazy directions, whereas values are firm and resilient and unmovable. But we've strayed from those, and so we're pulling ourselves in all these different directions and we're fracturing and breaking in the process. So, for example, say a country that we do trade with is holding an election, and there's a pro-American candidate and a not so pro-American candidate. A value-based action would be to respect and gracefully accept whatever the outcome of that election would be. Because we value liberty and freedom and, you know, a people's sovereignty, the ability for people to self-govern. We would value that. An interest-based action would be doing all that we could to influence that election to make sure that that pro-American candidate won the election. And if you think that America would never interfere with another country's sovereignty or election process, do some research. In the presence of an external aggressor like the Nazis or the Soviet Union, it's easy to come together and determine what our values are, in contrast to that external aggressor. But in a vacuum, we have to decide for ourselves. We must decide as citizens of the United States of America what our values are. What are we going to stand for? Where are we going to plant our flag and say we are not moving from this position because this is who we are? Are we actually going to support and value the middle class or only during the election cycle? Are we actually going to value our children and their futures, or are we going to continue to defund public education? Are we actually going to value the service and sacrifice of our bravest men and women in our armed forces, or continue to neglect them when they come home? And the list goes on. Action and decisions reveal character and values. America is this beautifully diverse country which is rich in differing opinions. That is a great part of our country, but we must establish what our values are. That's the foundation of this country, and without it, we're going to continue to fight and divide and crumble. Until we determine our values, we can only expect more of the same. And I don't know about you, but I am so tired of all of the arguing and fighting and just nonsense that I hear out there. We're better than this. I know we are. So, to my fellow Americans, who are we gonna be? Where are we gonna draw the line and say, this is who we are? This is what we stand for, this is what we're about. This is what we're going to live and work and die for. Now, I don't have the answer to that because it's not something that one person should decide. It's not something that the government should even decide. It's something that we, as citizens of the United States, have to decide. And so I want this to be a conversation. You know, what do you think that this country should stand for? What do we need to let go of? What interests do we need to let go of? What values do we need to embolden and stand for? So go ahead and put that, down in the comment section below, or, whatever. I'd like to know, because the problem starts with us and the solution starts with conversation. Because only together are we going to be able to figure all this out.